Hi, this is Joe Kwan, the Connection Counselor, and thank you for tuning in to Executive Tune-Up, where we make small changes to keep you performing at your best. So have you ever had a situation where you were kind of, for lack of a better word, scared to move forward, either because it was a difficult dilemma or perhaps it was a challenge that you hadn't really encountered before, and you weren't exactly sure how to get through it? And hopefully you did manage a way to stumble through it, but perhaps you're not quite sure and not confident that you could recreate it again. Well, today we're going to explore what I like to call the 4 C's of courage that can help you in a future situation. Stay tuned. Hello. So there's a difficult situation that requires some courage, right? And that happens a lot to us in the course of our day, in the course of our lives. And one of the good things about requiring courage is it kind of signals to you that there is something that's worth doing, right? And that you've sort of are in an area that's pretty important, right? Because if it wasn't important, there wouldn't be any challenges. People probably wouldn't be paying any attention to it, or there would be no resistance at all. So there's definitely some signals that, the courage that you're experiencing, let's talk about in the work environment, kind of signals to you that this is really a chance for you to kind of raise your performance and perform at your best. But often it can be difficult when we're in a difficult situation. How do we know what to do and what's the best way to approach that? So we're going to talk about 4 different C's that you can use and think about to give you a more nuanced, balanced, and effective approach to dealing with a situation that requires courage. So the first C I'm going to call clarity, right? Understanding what is the nature, not just of the situation, but what is the nature of the fear that you have that's going on. And often that analysis goes much deeper than the kind of obvious surface analysis, right? On the surface, there may be something like, well, it's a brand new process or it's a role I haven't done before. But it's really helpful to gain clarity in terms of having more courage to understand why that is creating the fear. Is it just something from the past where you had failed before and been traumatized from that? Is it a general fear of failure or a need to please people? And this sort of hits a sensitive kind of funny bone where you feel like if you don't please the current boss or team, that it will somehow destroy or ruin you, figuratively speaking. So from that sort of perspective, gaining clarity on what exactly is the fear coming from, because fear of just perhaps not being as prepared versus, fear of this, sort of ruining your relationship with the company and the team are quite different. So it's really helpful to understand and get clarity around where that fear is coming from, because that'll better help you address it and move forward with courage. Next, the second C is compassion, right? Sometimes we beat ourselves up a little bit that we aren't more courageous, and we think we see everyone else just moving forward and not being afraid, and not really understanding that those same people get afraid all the time, and maybe they are afraid in the situation that they're in that's similar to what you're in. They're just better at masking it, or they're just a little bit less afraid than you are. And any sort of energy we spend sort of beating up ourselves and berating ourselves actually takes energy away from the actual performance of the task. Whereas being compassionate towards yourself actually, I would say, adds energy and adds motivation, where you can sort of process that feeling and say, you know what, this is the way I feel. You got clarity on why it is earlier. There's a good reason. And you know what, that doesn't make me a bad person or a poor performer. It just makes me a human being. And also, I think it's important to point out, it makes you a human being at the point in time of where you are right now, right? So at this point, you may require more courage, but as you continue and succeed, maybe next time you'll require less courage because you'll be more confident. So it's really important to be as compassionate to ourselves as we might be to others. Imagine someone comes to you and says, "Oh, Joe, I'm really scared. This new job, they hired me and they're giving me a great pay raise and bonus, I'm not sure I can perform. I mean, what would you say to a friend or a family member or a close colleague like that, right? You'd be compassionate and say, yeah, it does sound like a big job, but I have a lot of confidence in you and I've seen you overcome problems before. We so easily give that to other people, but sometimes we don't show that same compassion to ourselves. So the first C is clarity, and the second is compassion. The third C, and I love this one, is centering. Right? What can happen a lot is when we're in a fearful situation, whether it's an immediate fear or kind of like a longer term anxiety, what tends to happen is it knocks us off center, right? And we start to careen in a direction and sort of lose control of our emotions, of our thought process, in a way that's not positive to good performance or accomplishing the task. So by being able to center yourself, and centering doesn't mean there is no fear. It means kind of you stay centered in the middle of the fear. And someone that I used to train in Aikido with, Liz, she had this wonderful metaphor of being in the eye of the hurricane, right? So it's not that there's a hurricane going on. It's everything is swirling around you, yet you're able to stay centered and in the middle because you can really see and perceive what's going on better if you're in the eye of the hurricane rather than swirling around 100, 200 miles per hour. And that will really help with your judgment and insight. It'll also help with your performance because you'll be able to engage with the fear, with the task at the appropriate time from a position of strength and power rather than trying to catch up or being blown this way and that and trying to engage. So first, have clarity. Second, have compassion for yourself. And third, have centering. And we can do this in many different ways. You can do it by talking to someone who has a centering sort of feeling to you. You can do it by breathing more intentionally. You can do it by taking a walk. I mean, that's one that I know a lot of people do. They take a walk or they switch activities, and that helps them center and they come back. So I'm curious, let us know in the comments below what you do to center and to sort of get your balance back when things are difficult and maybe you're facing a difficult situation in your life. So we'd love to know. Please leave a comment below. Next, challenging. So this is integral to being courageous. I kind of left this for the end. Typically, people think of challenging exclusively when it comes to courage. It's kind of like just doing it and going ahead and challenging your fears. I think it works well to leave this kind of towards the fourth consideration because you can better do this when, one, you have clarity on where the fear is coming from. Two, you have compassion for yourself and why you feel this fear and why it's difficult for you. And three, you're fully centered and ready to engage and challenge. And then you go in and you challenge from a position of as much strength as you can, given the situation, which is that you do have fear. And challenge is really key, right? Because feeling courageous is one thing, but the actual action to challenge it is really what changes that fear into confidence and action. When we actually take the steps rather than just think about, okay, that seems okay. The two go hand in hand. The thought and the feeling and the action and that challenging actually go hand in hand. So those are the 4 C's of courage. So next time you have a challenging situation which requires a lot of courage, I encourage you to what requires the courage, I encourage you to think of these 4 C's of courage. Number 1, gain clarity over the situation and why you're feeling this way. 2, have compassion for yourself. Understand that there's a reason you feel this way. It's totally normal and other people do. Centering, right? Get centered, and so you can jump in at the right moment with the most strength. And finally, the actual action, which is the challenging of the situation and going through with it. So I hope this has been helpful. Thanks for coming in to Executive Tune-Up. I'm Joe Kwan, the Connection Counselor. Remember, to do your best, you have to be at your best. So tune in to Tune Up.